very good answers to the questions were decent and noteworthy. Happy viewing.
Here with Goode, and in this episode we have deeper insights into the secret space program with the astonishing disclosures of William Tompkins, our 94-year-old aerospace engineer, who is clearly one of the founding fathers of the very Solar Warden program, which he named that same code name that Corey later worked in. In this first interview that we're going to show you, Tompkins gets into detail about one of the craft designs that he was working on for the Navy. Let's take a look.
So we talked before about the different types, and this is a 2-kilometer long spacecraft carrier, and it's like streamlined to a degree. And so in one of the big design review meetings, one of the managers said, "Wait a minute, Bill, it's a vacuum out there. You don't have to make it pointed. You don't have to have atmosphere to go working through." And so I said, well, that's true. But the electromagnetic protection system, which we still are not sure how are going to work, may or may not be capable of handling all of the different types of vehicles or weapons that could be being used on us. And also, under certain conditions, we actually can get into the planet's atmosphere and operate. So anyway, we got around that one. Now, if you can picture here, this area down in here, I'm going to switch these, and you're going to see the lower part of the hull, and what you see there is the different classes of attack and fighter aircraft returning to the mothership or the spacecraft carrier, and with a vacuum-controlled entry sections. Actually, they would designed to fold down so that you're already in support of making inside landing. Nobody actually flies in these squadrons and controlling any of the vehicles. It's all automatic. So you're not going to be hitting the walls or any of this kind of thing. But very quickly you can open these hatches on the side. The hatch then becomes sort of a platform to possibly land on if you're too low. And this answers the question of how do we handle the large spaces aboard the ships that are going to be operating out in the missions. So what we had done then was using the same type of design concepts. We looked at the Marines missions. We looked at the communication missions. We actually came up with virtually hundreds then of missions and submissions that we then in the tank made recommendations back to the Navy themselves. And one admiral, when he saw that first illustration, he made the statement that just the shape of that's going to scare them away. They'll turn around and go back because it is a pretty hot configuration. Some of the others are not as good, and actually some of them are rectangular, depending on what the mission is required to accomplish.
So that's a pretty technically detailed diagram, and it's just one of a variety of things that come from this guy who has no financial interest in this. You know, his book didn't sell very much. He's just living on a fixed income, and yet that degree of precision in the art doesn't seem like would be coming from somebody who's trying to make something up. So I'm curious about how similar that looks to anything that you saw.
That was most likely one of the concept designs that probably got fine-tuned. But there could be a craft that looks like that out there that I hadn't seen. I didn't see all of our vessels out there. Now, that looked very similar to longer wedge-shaped vessels that I saw that had areas coming up off the top, almost like you see on a Navy vessel on the ocean. And also, it had stealth edges. The corners were very much like the stealth ships that you see, how they curve.
Well, and something kind of caught my eye, which is that in his discussions with his superiors on the design, they said, oh, you don't need to worry about aerodynamics. It's not going through an atmosphere. Well, what I'm thinking of is, well, wait a minute. There's all this charge that you got to move through even in space. There's inertia and there's electromagnetic fields. So do you think that part of the reason why everything has an aerodynamic shape is that the basic vacuum energy of space itself has some sort of resistance that you have to cut through when you go through it?
They don't all have aerodynamic shape.
Oh, okay.
And as far as moving through charged particles and all this stuff in space, that's what the material on the outside of the craft and the electromagnetic shielding is for.
But in a case like this, for that particular mission, if it's also going to go through a planet's atmosphere, it would be good to have some aerodynamic qualities.
Right. The vessels that travel inside our atmosphere and out are usually going to be somewhat aerodynamic, even though with the propulsion systems they have, they are not traveling through the atmosphere per se. They are in a bubble, and inside that bubble, the bubble is traveling.
Is there a reason for why stealth technology seems to involve these different flat panels that are kind of arranged at different angles? What's going on there?
It deflects radar, LiDAR, different waves away from the receiver of the radar or LiDAR. So how it works is if you send it out and it hits a flat surface that's angled right, it's going to come back and you're going to get a report from that wave bouncing back. If you have sharp angles, then very little of that wave is going to bounce back. The rest of it's going to be dispersed, and the waves will bounce off, but they're not going to hit the detector.
Well, I know that my insider Pete Peterson described that when the stealth was rolled out for Gulf War I, that it had in fact been mothballed for 20 years and was a very archaic and almost useless piece of technology by that time. Here he's doing something in the 1950s that looks like stealth.
Yeah.
So that's pretty darn interesting.
Yeah, stealth goes way back.
Really?
Right. Stealth was being developed soon after the discovery and invention of the radar.
Wow. So I noticed in the second image that he showed that you have these very, very large doors, or hatches as he was calling them, that open up on the side of the craft, and then a lot of little triangular wedges going in. So what was your feeling when you saw that part of the illustration?
Well, as far as the doors opening, I had seen elevators that lift aircraft, move aircraft around, but if you have a door opening out, that can cause a lot of logistical problems if you're in battle or if you are traveling at a high rate of speed. So usually they have the doors open like this, up and down, and not protrude out.
Right.
But if there was another purpose and a need for it, I could see, why they would develop it.
What about the actual shape of all those craft that were going into the larger craft?
Yes, that was very familiar. And the fact that he mentioned in these newer vessels or carriers, they do fly drones. They have people all inside sitting in long rows flying drones, and they control, a number of drones a piece.
Really?
Yeah, little constellations of drones.
So what would this type of craft that he was designing be used for? Is it an attack craft? Is this a support craft?
It can be offensive and defensive, but usually these craft are designed to be offensive for attacking an enemy.
Subscribe to the channel. Press the bell so as not to miss new episodes. Take care of yourself.